So hello again.
Hello.
Yeah, all right. You know, like many of you probably, when I was in my teen years, I was very much into church. Anybody like that here? Oh, all right. It was the perfect place for me at that time. Gave me a sense of community and belonging and purpose. And it helped me ground myself in culture and tradition, for which I'm very, very grateful and always will be. And I used to help out in the Sunday school, and I worked with the younger kids, and there was a little song we used to sing. I won't sing it for you. But the words went something like this. The Bible. Yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the Bible. Anybody remember that? Oh, yes, okay. We used to march around and sing that song, and we'd stomp our feet when we came to that stand-alone part. Oh, it was a good one. Had fun with it. And it also represented an understanding that I had at that time, and it was also simple then. It was so simple and so beautiful, all those wonderful Bible stories. You want it closer? Okay, sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. Is that better?
That's good.
Yes.
Okay. So, those wonderful old Bible stories, you remember, right?
Yeah.
And they were the absolute truth. They were the truth, the absolute literal truth. And I loved the Bible, and I wanted to know more about it. I wanted to know more about the history and the teachings. And so when I grew into early adulthood, I threw myself into the studies of the Bible, Christianity, and other world religions, and my understanding changed. And I began to understand what we know now as the research and scholarship so clearly reveals that the Bible is not necessarily the literal recording of actual facts and events in just the way that they were told. So, I wanted to talk to my minister about that. That's how naive I was. The faith tradition I was involved in at that time didn't know how to be with all those questions and that information. They not only opposed it, they condemned it and anyone else who questioned it. And so you really had two choices. It was made very clear to me, you have two choices. You either embrace the stories literally, or else you're out of here. You're condemned. That's it. Those were the two choices that I had. I was told I was falling away, and so I fell away and moved out of the church. It was a spiritual crisis for me at the time. But I continued my studies and my research, and over time I came to the work of Joseph Campbell. How many of you people know who I'm talking about? Great. Joseph Campbell. He did a PBS series a few years ago called The Power of Myth with Bill Moyers. Remember that? That would be a wonderful thing to revisit. And it's a classic work, timeless. So Campbell was a professor of world religion and mythology, and he used to come through the area, the Puget Sound area. Was anybody here then? And went to any of his seminars and workshops? Oh, they were fabulous. That man was so brilliant. And he really helped me put together the puzzles and the mystery in such a beautiful way when he told us that these spiritual stories work on us and that their purpose and relevance in our lives is very deep and meaningful. He said they're like road maps. They're like road maps, but not the actual location. You know, a map of Bremerton is not Bremerton. Sometimes we do that, though, don't we? We point to the map and say, oh, there's Bremerton, right? But it's not. We know that it's not really Bremerton. It's a representation that just shows us the way to get there. Right? Mm-hmm. There's one thing, however, that Campbell said that really troubled me deeply, and it was this. He said, you have to make peace with your tradition. Ooh, really? He says you're born into a tradition and culture, and a tradition and culture is born in you. It's a part of us. That's another long story. Now, he didn't mean that you have to believe it or embrace it necessarily, but you have to make peace with it somehow. And I thought, oh boy, I'm really sunk now. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I never thought I could do that. I was so hurt by the send-off that I had received, and I had all this other information now. I didn't think I could make peace with it until I came to unity. Charles Fillmore said that these stories must be spiritually interpreted. And it was at unity that I came to understand that I could be with the stories and I could be with the tradition in a way that was deeply relevant for me. I could make peace with it and integrate it into a healthy spiritual perspective. I could have my love for the Bible and for Jesus too in an even deeper way. Amazing, revolutionary, illuminating, deeply meaningful. So, what I understand now is this, that whatever the tradition, Christian, Jewish, Islamic, Buddhist, Native American, the spiritual stories were never really intended to be taken literally because that limits and constrains them. I like to say that these stories are more than literal. More than literal. And if you wish to take the stories literally, please by all means do so. But don't limit the teachings just to a literal meaning. In the Jewish tradition, there's a practice called midrash. Midrash. It's the ongoing contemporary exploration for meaning and insight. There isn't any one specific meaning. The stories keep revealing themselves as we use them for contemplation and for practice. We unwrap these stories and all the meanings over time, over generations. So spiritual stories then are carriers for meaning, but they're not the meaning itself. They carry an understanding or an insight, just as a cup carries its contents. But sometimes we focus on the container, on the cup and the shape, and we miss what's inside the cup. The cup is simply a carrier. The story is simply a vehicle for meaning. It's what's inside it that really is what we're after. And we need the story, we need the structure to carry the meaning and to bring us the essence. All this attention on the literal form distracts us from experiencing the content. Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg says, it's like gazing at the sky through a straw, seeing only a very small part of it while we're convinced we're seeing the whole thing. So, what I hope for now is that we can get to a place of curiosity about these stories, about what's inside the cup, what's inside the story. To a place of curiosity. I wonder what's in there. I wonder what it tastes like. I wonder if it's sweet or bitter. I wonder if it's my cup of tea. There's a story I'd like to share with you from the Gospel of John, if you don't mind. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. Oh, good. It's from the 20th and 21st chapter of John, if you're interested. You probably all heard this. The other side of the boat, that story. Who doesn't know that story? Oh, you don't know the story? Oh. I'll bet you'll remember it. It'll become more familiar to you as we go on. I first heard this story when I was a young girl in the church. I remember sitting in the church hearing the story and being so moved by it. I didn't even really understand what it meant, but I was very moved by this story. And it's a story that changes me over time. It's evolved with me and taken me with it. And the story takes place at a terrible time. A terrible time. The world just seems to be crumbling down. It was after the crucifixion of Jesus. And Simon, whose nickname was Peter, he had been a close follower, a close friend, a disciple of Jesus. And like many of the men in this story, he went into hiding. He went into the hiding. Now, Peter, Petros, the name Peter, means the rock. The rock. And it is said that he was called the rock because he was the one who was supposed to build the church, the foundation of the church. Many of you know that, right? Peter built the church of Rome, yes? So they said that he built of course he did, he was the rock. But Joseph Campbell said that he thought that Peter was nicknamed the rock because he was so dense. And so stuck in his ways. And there are a lot of stories about that, about Peter too. So, Simon Peter, it's after the crucifixion, and Simon Peter goes back home to his family near the sea. Now, I imagine what this must have been like for him. Oh, this was a dark time. This was a terrifying experience. And I imagine that he rushes into his little home, and he's a sight. He's a sight. Breathless and pale, his eyes red with tears, and the family is shocked to see him in this state. They ask him, Peter, what happened? What's going on? But he waves them away. He can't talk about it. He just can't talk about it. And I imagine that he goes down into a dark corner of the cottage and hunkers down there and pulls up his cloak around them. He is inconsolable. He is grief-stricken and deeply, deeply ashamed. Because only just the day before, he had denied ever even knowing Jesus at all. Peter is in that dazed and confused state that accompanies grief. The turmoil of those last few days and all the events surrounding Jesus' death, the rumors have left him so confused, and his mind a tangled net of fears and regrets and sadness, and he's spiraling down into a dark night of the soul. And the darkness goes on a few days. And I don't know exactly how this happened. Maybe his wife said, Peter, it's time. Why don't you go out and take your boat fishing? It does you good, all that fresh air. It'll be good for you. So Peter waited until darkness fell, and under the protection of the night sky, when no one could see him, and stopped him and asked him where he'd been and what was going on, he left home and walked down to the boat. And he found his brother, Andrew, on board, asleep. He was hiding out too, and there were some others there as well in the boat. He woke them up. And then the men moved wordlessly into their familiar routine of getting the boat ready to shove off. The shipboards creaked as they moved, creating that eerie sound sometimes you hear across the water. You know what I mean? That eerie sound of echoing across the water, rippling across the water. They pulled up their anchor and drifted off just deep enough to drop their nets. The ship's hull groaning slightly in the current, the sounds of the water lapping up against the sides of the boat. If there was any place on earth that Peter felt more at home, it was right here. If there was any peace to be found. but not for Peter. The stars were so bright and crisp, so quiet, so very quiet. From the village, only an occasional animal sound, dog barking every now and then in the distance, night bird calling, all peaceful, except for Peter. Another sleepless night. And to say that Peter brooded hardly captures the depth of his anguish. He played the scenes over and over in his mind, because that's just what our minds do, recalling the fears and the humiliation at both being identified as a friend and then the shame of his betrayal. And all night long they fished. And all night long they caught what? What did they catch? Nothing. Exactly. They caught nothing. Then the night passed and dawn breaks. Friends, you ever read a story and it says, and then dawn breaks? Ooh, something's about to happen here. A shift is about to occur. Illumination is in the works. And in the filtered light of dawn, a scatter of people start to form on shore. Some are fishermen getting ready to take their boats out or make repairs in the nets and sails. And a figure appears on shore, and a voice calls out, "Have you caught anything yet?" Peter thought nothing of it. These fishermen are always eager to know what the catch of the day is. Certainly he's been asked that question a lot of times. But even that question taxed him to the maximum. He's at this point of despair. But he knew if he didn't answer, they'd just keep asking. So he reached down deep within himself and called back, "No, not a thing." The figure on shore, it didn't move. Instead, it just stood there a while. And then, quite simply and clearly, called out, "Cast your nets on the other side of the boat." Whoa. Something familiar about that voice. Without hesitation, he moved swiftly, and his men moved with him, pulling the nets out of the water and lowering them on the other side of the boat. And right away, the nets were teeming with fish. The men pulled the nets in, hauling in this huge catch of fish, fish jumping all over the boat, slapping the men in their legs, shimmering in the morning sunlight. Heaps of fish. And the men looked at each other and said, "What? What is this?" Incredulous laughter began to echo out across the water. Their laughter improbable, radical, in contrast to the brooding of just minutes before. And Peter looked out at the man on shore and recognized the truth of it right away. It is the Master. This is a pivotal moment in the story too, because that moment of recognition is an awakening. As morning came and the light illuminated the darkness, Peter realized that what he had been grieving was not lost, was not missing, was not lost to him, and he jumped into the water, swimming to shore to meet Jesus. It's a joyous reunion. What happened? Just what was the guidance that Peter had been instructed to follow? Peter had not been told, "Hey, take your boat out a little further. You go out another 100 yards or so, there'll be some fish over there." No, that's not what he was told. He wasn't told to get new technology and use a new technique, some better nets. No. He'd been told to make a shift, to enlarge his perspective, to turn just slightly in a different direction to the other side of the boat. That's all. Direct your attention away from what is missing to the all that is, just waiting for us to see it. And when he did, Peter experienced a breakthrough in consciousness, a breakthrough in awareness, allowing him to see beyond the limitations of these old ways of seeing into more awareness that what he had been looking for was there all the time. You know, in times of challenge and crisis, we tend to forget our connection to this very basic truth. I get it, I understand, I've been there. It's the nature of loss and grief to focus on what is missing. That's what it does. But all spiritual transformation starts when we shift our point of view and awaken from our trance of separation, our habitual fears, and ask, what is already here that for me that I do not see? What is already here for me that I do not see? Right. It is the call of awareness, emerging from our confusion and darkness, because, dear friends, you know this is the absolute truth. What is real is always with you. Let me say that again. What is real is always with you. What is real is always with you. As Unity poet James Dillard Freeman said, I am here. You may not see me, but I am here. There's another part of the story. I'm not done with you yet. I'm not. When will she go home? All right. Okay. Peter swims to the shore. He's reignited with the Christ. We can only imagine it's all imagining anyhow, but we can only imagine the strength and power of that encounter. But then something happens that I never would have expected. It's amazing what happens next. You see, what happens next is that Jesus had made breakfast for them. What? Just like a good Jewish mother. Jesus had made breakfast. Oh, I don't know about you, but that just... The point of it is that all of this wonderful, transcendent spiritual awakening needs to be grounded and practical, needs to be life-affirming and life-serving. We are awake now, my friends. Yes? Yes?
Yes.
We are awake now, and there's work to do. And as the visit is winding down, Jesus turns to Simon Peter, and this is what he says. He says, Simon, do you love me? Oh, man. Imagine that. Imagine that the Christ, that the divine, that the sacred turns to you and says, do you love me? Well, of course, Simon replies, you know I love you. Then Jesus said, feed my lambs. Oh. Okay. Well, if that wasn't enough, Jesus asks him again, Simon, do you really Peter says, well, yeah, you know I love you. Now, Peter, he's so pestered by this habitual ego, he begins to feel a little annoyed that Jesus is asking him again. Can you believe this? Just minutes ago, he's grieving the loss of Jesus. He's back, and now he's annoyed. He is so human. He is so us. And Jesus says, okay, then take care of my sheep. And then, one more time, the Christ asks, Simon, do you love me? Now, of course, he knows what the answer is going to be. But the point is, the question is directed at us, and we're the ones that need to answer it. This is the question that really pierces through all of our nonsense, all of our egoic contentment when we think that we have it all together and we've found the truth and we can just lean back now and float on all this beautiful awareness. And instead we are confronted and challenged and in your face about all that this spiritual life really means. Peter says, yes, you know I love you. And Jesus says, then feed my sheep. Oh, man. Now, for anybody who still wants to take all this literally, do you really think that Jesus had left a flock of sheep somewhere out there? No. The sheep are a reference to those most vulnerable and those most in need. Because they are the most vulnerable of creatures. They can't run very fast. They're not aggressive by nature, and they have no defenses over predators. So what we're being instructed and what we're being told is if you truly love this work, if you truly love this movement, if you truly love the sacred, then we will take care in an authentic and real way and make that love visible in the world. What is the last unity principle?
Action.
Who said that?
Action.
Action. Action. It's not enough. It's not enough just to sit here and know it, is it? It's sweet. We need to do this and come together. And we need to come together and learn how to serve. Our work is to take care of the most vulnerable and those in need. And when I hear, what I hear in this encounter is Simon, Annie, when you spend time thinking about yourself and what you've lost, the more suffering you're going to experience. But when we think of alienating the suffering of others, then our own is reduced. In the darkness of loss and confusion, we find that love spins gold from our grief. And this is what it looks like. First, ask, what is already here for me that I do not see? And turn to the other side of the boat. And two, know that what is real is always with you. Always with you. And then three, serve. Every time we serve, we resonate at the energy of divine love. And this is one way that we experience God with us. Every day, see how much love you can manifest I know I hear it. I'm too busy. I don't have enough to give. I'm too tired. I'm burned out. I feel your pain. But can you pray? Seriously, can you pray? Can you offer the loving kindness blessing to others? Can you do small acts of kindness, like picking someone up for church or making a call or picking up litter? Can you serve your church? Can you put your hands in your pockets and tithe to this community to see this community really grow and be the force for good that it can be and will be for the world? Can you do that? That's how we make it real in the world. Little things. Little things. Not huge. Drop by drop. Fill the bucket of care. One shovel full at a time. One heart at a time. To make the world a better place, as Debbie said when we started. One heart at a time to make the world a better place. This love, my friends, is not just to be felt, not just a sentimental children's song, but it is a committed work and a great inconvenience. But it is how we make that love alive. It is how the love of God is made known in the world. One heart at a time.